Welcome back to Shabbat Made Simple, Part 6. Our objective is to create the world's finest suit, or any suit for that matter, or any piece of clothing for that matter. This particular suit retails for about $900,000, but even if you choose not to use the diamond studs or the world's most expensive wool, the process to go from this sheep to this suit is exactly the same. It has been the same for all of human history. In our previous lesson, part 1, we did the first 5 steps, going from the sheep to the yarn that's seen below. We sheared the sheep, we cut its wool, we cleaned the wool, we carded it, making it nice and neat, we spun it, turning it into yarn, and then we dyed it, making it the color that we wanted it to be. Today, we're going to go from this yarn up here into the finished cloth that you see down here. Now let me warn you that these next steps are actually quite complicated to visualize in your mind. The most important thing is that you know that you're not allowed to do anything that is like weaving, or obviously the actual steps of weaving itself. Now imagine your favorite pair of blue jeans. If you look at them very carefully with a magnifying glass, this is what it will look like. And so it is for almost all clothing that you will be wearing. Almost all clothing we have is woven. And basically, woven clothing is taking yarn or strings, and in particular patterns, depending on what we want the final product to look like, putting them together in an under and over and under and over sort of way. The pattern you see on your left will make a herringbone. Now, to understand exactly how woven clothing is made, you need to understand that all woven clothing has the weft. The weft is the string that goes in the right to left direction, going from side to side. Then there's the other string, which is going up and down. That is called the warp. It can go from something as simple as what this child is doing right here, to modern cloth mills where everything is done by machine. But the process remains the same. You need to take one piece of yarn and weave it in between the other pieces of yarn. Now we're going to learn the 4 steps. In the olden days, they used a frame that looks like this, called a loom. Even today, looms are used, but they've been mechanized. The very first step in a loom is you need to set the up and down strings in such a way that soon you will be able to pass the side-to-side strings to go through them. This first step, which is step number 6, in our overall picture of making cloth, is called setting the warp. Once again, there are many ways to set the warp. The image you see on your left is the most simple way, and this was the way it was done in the olden days. Setting the warp is what allows us to have all of the B threads set up in such a way that they're not crossing each other, and that you're able to pass the A threads through them in whatever pattern you choose to. The next step is we want to be able to pass the A threads through these, but we want to be able to do it simply. So what we do is we set up all of these strings that you see here. Each one of these strings is attached to one of the up and down strings, one of the warp strings, as you see right here in this little image on the bottom. And what you do is by pulling out one set of strings, that causes a space for us to be able to pass something through them, and then we pull out the next set of strings, and we keep going on in this way, in such a way that we're able to create the pattern that we're trying to create. This is the 7th step, and it's called setting the hetals. Each one of these loops is called a hetal. Even today, this process stays the same. The only difference is, once again, it's all been done by machine. But we must find a way, in order to pass the sideway threads through the up and down threads, in whatever pattern we choose and doing it simply instead of doing it all by hand. Now, if you look at this picture that's from 3,000 years ago, you'll see they have the up and down strings, and then they have that piece right there. That piece right there is called the shuttle. The shuttle would be string attached to a spool that is thrown through the threads that you're trying to weave, or pass through it, as you see in this picture, letting off string as you pass it through, thereby making a side-to-side string. And that, of course, would be the 8th step, the actual weaving. By doing this again and again and again and again, through various patterns, you're able to make a complete piece of cloth. Now, sometimes you make a mistake, or you need to attach one piece of cloth to another. What you need to do then is you need to unweave the edge of your work in order to be able to weave it into the next cloth, or in order to be able to fix it. And this 9th step is, of course, called unweaving. Now, I know all of that was a little bit complicated, and once again, you or I may not choose to weave anytime soon. However, there are many things in our day-to-day life that may be compared to weaving, and therefore, the most important thing you understand from these 4 steps is simply that anything that is compared to weaving or unweaving, or any of the steps in that process, is prohibited on Shabbat. So far, we've learned 9 steps going from a sheep to a piece of cloth. Until next time, wishing you and your loved ones a Shabbat Shalom.